I just want to welcome you all to our speaker series. Our topic today is From Classroom to Community. My name is Sarah Coleman, and I'm the Senior Director of Race and Gender Equity at YWCA South Florida. And I'm happy you're all here, taking a moment out of your day to join us and learn something new, hopefully. Our speaker series is a live virtual discussion about social justice issues that are really important in the South Florida community. So, like I said, introduce yourselves. If you have questions, put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the discussion. So we are officially into our second week of school. I dropped off a very teary-eyed 5-year-old girl this morning at her school. Um, School, for me, it could not come fast enough. I'm a mom of two littles, an almost 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I feel like towards the end of summer, they are less like children and more like tiny hurricanes that just are like, "Wah!" And so I really look forward to the return of school because it brings back some routine and some pace and all the things that parents really, really crave. Um, having said that, I towards as we get closer to the beginning of school, I talk with my 5-year-old a lot about what it means to be inclusive. And that might sound like cliche or silly, but it's true. We talk about what if there's a new kid in the class? What if you are the new kid in the class? What if there's someone on the playground who's sitting alone? Asking someone to play who no one else is playing with, discussions like that. And so we talk a lot about that. And my hope, and I know that parents often hope, is that when they walk into the school, they will be accepting and inclusive of all the diverse children that come into their lives. And so, luckily, I have a former colleague who works for Best Buddies, and specifically Eunie's Buddies, and we'll learn more about Eunie's Buddies over the next hour. But she asked me to help with a video about talking to families and children about being inclusive during the first weeks of school. And so I thought, wow, what a wonderful, beautiful idea for a speaker series. And that's where Cecilia Elizalde comes in. She is the Senior Director of Eunie's Buddies at Best Buddies International, and we are so happy to have her. Cecilia, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. It's such an honor to be here, and I love these gatherings because it's such a great opportunity to exchange information, or not even just information, but experiences like you just did. So thank you for making this happen.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, could you first just tell us a little bit about yourself, and how you came to Best Buddies, and then we'll sort of like dive into Eunie's Buddies.
Okay. So I am also a mom of two. My eldest, Valentina, she's 13. She happens to have Down syndrome. And I have a boy whose name is Oliver. He is 10 years old. He's neurotypical. And before Valentina was born, I was in the entertainment industry. I produced and hosted a music TV show. I was covering the Grammys and living my
Mhm.
dream, really. It was what I wanted to do since I was a kid. And then Valentina came to this world and it changed it completely. It was a 180 for me
Yeah.
on so many levels because she was the first person with a disability that I had ever met. So you can imagine my ignorance on this topic and how to navigate it and just how to help her and
Yeah.
foster the best possible environment for all of us. um, so when she was born, because I came from media and communications, I started noticing that there was lack of representation for individuals with intellectual or developmental disability. And I wanted to create something that helped change that. And so I launched a campaign that made history. And she became the first person with Down syndrome to model for a major fashion designer. And little by little, she continued her journey with modeling. with different brands, and that contributed towards inclusive advertising. And then that opened a world for me too, to be able to work with different organizations, national and international, about inclusion
Mhm.
and disability in general. So it's been a wonderful journey for me. And then when the time came to launch Unie's Buddies, Best Buddies approached me to help oversee and launch and lead this initiative. And I was more than honored because it's in honor of Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who did so much for our community. She is the mother of our founder. She was the mother of our founder, and she was the founder of the Special Olympics, and she helped create many initiatives that till this day positively impact our disability communities. So for me to lead a program and her name is just,
A
full circle,
dream.
and such a big responsibility, but honor as well.
That's amazing. What a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like the most passionate advocates for disability rights and children with disabilities are their parents. It always goes back to the moms, and the dads of the children. So, thank you for sharing that. So, Uni's buddy's message is, we see you, we get you, we're with you. And I think that that's a really beautiful message because parenthood is hard. And when you are confronted with a disability diagnosis of your child, it may become even harder. Like you said, you had no, your daughter was the first person you had met with a disability. So, there's this gap in knowledge. It's hard. So we crave support and community that tells us we're not alone. Um, so I think for a lot of parents of children with disabilities, the first day of school, that transition and wondering if their child's going to be treated kindly, um, is nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
So how do we encourage parents, not just when they get a diagnosis of disability, but as their child ages and they go into these new experiences like school?
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us, like you said, we crave community, but we don't often, I don't think at the beginning that everybody recognizes that how beneficial that can
Mm.
be. And that's why Uni's Buddies comes in and connects you with another parent who helps guide you and just answers any questions for you. And then as you grow older, that mentor would be with you even when you transition into school. And so that person who already was there is able to tell you, like, ease some fears. Because often, whenever we're talking about like the first day of school, let's say,
Yeah,
we imagine all sorts of scenarios. And when talking to somebody else that says, well, actually, it was really great, or, the first week, it might be tough for any kid, with or without a disability, but then, they get used to and they do this and that. It helps so much. And so for new parents who are transitioning into this, I encourage them to look at it with optimism, and much like with the entire journey, yes, there is a possibility of there being some challenges, like for any child in life, for any
yeah,
parent in life. But then there are also so many great possibilities, and that can, lead to something that you didn't even think of, and
yeah,
could be super exciting, and that your child could really surprise you. The teachers could really surprise you. Um, so going into it not with like an energy of apprehension, but rather excitement and collaboration with the teachers and the educators and everybody around your child, so that you can, create that community for them as well.
yeah. I think that's so true. I think they're exposed, like, they're exposed to all these different opportunities when they walk through those doors, so it's so important that they're walking into an inclusive space, and I think that for me was always, like, the nerve-wracking part is that once my daughter Betty walks through those doors, I'm not there anymore. I'm not there to guide them, I'm not there to tell her, like, reach out to that child who might not be, playing with the other kids. But how can we talk to our children? How can we talk to our parents about um, how to be inclusive during the school day and in the classroom, on the playground,
I
all those
think
various
if you're
moments.
talking to the parents and sharing your perspective from as a mom and saying,
Mhm.
I'm nervous about this, I think it'll humanize the experience a bit more, and other parents will start to understand how important it is for them to talk to their children like you did, because it will make an impact in my daughter, how your child treats my daughter, and how the environment is created in that classroom where we all leave them with
Yeah,
what they know at this point from what we've told them or what we've shown by example. um, and so it's important that other parents, if we're able to, if we're in that place at that point as a parent of a child with IDD, we're starting to share our experience with everyone else, because then they start to understand why it is so important to talk
mhm,
to their children about this and to generate that inclusion. And then once they understand your perspective, it's also important to mention why it's beneficial to them, because really, when you insert a student with IDD in the classroom, it's like a ripple effect for everybody else around them. And so the neurotypical children or their peers will also learn about patience and empathy and all these values that are so important for a well rounded education. It's not something you're just telling them. They're actually living it, because they have to, understand that their peer might take a little longer, or they have to help their peer. Like all these values that I would
yeah,
hope most of us want for children, they are able to live it and
yeah.
really learn it by having this student there.
Yeah, they're practicing it, right? They're
Yeah,
practicing
absolutely.
those skills, those life
Yeah,
skills, the friendship skills. Yeah, I feel like the classroom is like a microcosm of of our grown-up world, and it's like just their
yeah,
little world, and they're learning all those skills. So
for
you're
sure.
right. I mean, there's literal like data that shows inclusive classrooms are good for every kid.
Yeah.
Neurotypical disabilities, it's a win-win.
It
So
really is. Yeah. And when
yeah.
talking, you asked me how to talk to your children. If it's your child with an IDD, you'll have to assess how much they're able to comprehend at that point.
Mhm.
But on the same token, I, for example, decided to just kind of go, let her lead. If she comes back to me with information, we'll address it. But I
Mhm.
didn't want to, um, like from the start, plan scenarios that might never happen for her.
Oh, man.
Let her see what happens, and then when she comes back, we'll navigate those together. But then
Yeah.
for neurotypical children, I do think that showing that empathy by hanging out with a peer during the summer, so or whenever you can, um, that has a disability, helps them understand a lot better than you telling them how important it is. So it's important, I think, to have maybe a book to read about it, or to have a friend who you can, invite over so they can understand what you're trying to tell them a little bit better.
I love that. You just like you said a word that like made my radar go ding ding. Um, I have so many books at home, so many picture books, like to the point where like my husband this weekend was like, should we like get rid of some of the books? Like there's just so many. And I was like, no, we can't. They're beautiful. I put so much time and effort into finding books with diverse voices,
I
diverse
love that.
children, diverse authors, illustrators, but I am purposeful and making sure my daughter and my son see pictures of children with disabilities, that they learn about intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, because I want them to go into the world having like not a shocked reaction, like, what
Right.
is this? Who
Yeah.
is this? How are they
Yeah.
doing this? And so I think for me, you also talked about this at the beginning of your journey with your daughter, representation. I mean, to me, representation is so important. And I wonder if you talk with families of children with and without disabilities about representation.
I do. Whenever I get a chance, like even if it's at the park, I'll see somebody starting to stare, and I don't take it personally. I take it as an opportunity to talk about this. And it's like, oh, this is Valentina. She has Down syndrome, or like if I see her that before she would see Valentina struggling, doing something on the playground, it's because of her muscle tone. So I would explain that to the child, and the child would get it like in a second and continue playing. Like there was nothing extraordinary about it, and just normalize that. And then that would strike up a conversation with the mom about representation and just diversity in general, which I feel is so important. And I could see families kind of thinking about it a little bit more. Like I had planted a seed, which to me meant the world, because it might have
Yeah.
been something that before that, much like myself, they could just go on with their lives. And that was not something that was on the radar. But
Yeah.
because of that encounter, because of that conversation, it now is. And now it could, again, with the ripple effect, it will then go into that child, or they could talk with another mom, and then we start creating that more inclusive environment.
I love that. I also love that children are so curious, and I feel like when they're so young and so little, it's just pure, like, innocent curiosity, and
Yes.
I love that you take those moments to make them a learning moment and not like a, "Why are you looking at my daughter?" Like, like,
Yeah,
getting
totally.
defensive because yeah, it's real, like, children when they're little, they're curious, they wanna know. I think it's, like, when they get older where things come into play, more social logistics come into play. So you mentioned that you were always trying not to plan for something that might not even happen.
Yeah.
What do we do when something does happen, though? When our littles are faced with moments that are not so great, especially our littles with disabilities, when they feel unaccepted or um, like they've just had a rough day at
Yeah.
school.
I think it's super important to let them process the emotions, like if they come crying, and also for us to identify the emotions, because sometimes they might not come crying and they might just kind of like be, you know,
Mm,
quieter, or they start not wanting to go to school. Or so I think that would be the first step, identifying your child's behavior to see how they're feeling and how they're doing. And then constant communication with the teacher as well. If you're able to have a paraprofessional, that's even better, because then you
mhm,
have eyes in there. And so you're able to communicate with that person and understand better the context of what's going on. Um, but I think it's super important to empower your child, because you have no control, none of us do, of what the world will do, or how other person will act towards you, or what they might say. But again, it could be a really good opportunity for you to talk with your child about their power towards how they handle situations and how they maneuver tricky moments through life and
mhm,
with people. um, of course, the conversation will vary depending on the child's age and their ability to understand these concepts. But even if it's somebody little, just starting with, how are you feeling? And then depending on how they're feeling, what would you like to say to that person? Or what could you do to stop that person from doing that? And then depending on how the conversation goes, you give them certain tools to use for if there's ever another situation like that. I personally like to try to let them handle it initially,
mhm.
depending on the type of situation. Um, but if you're seeing them struggle, it's always important to communicate with the teacher and tell your child too. Like if that person's not listening to you or continues with that behavior, you need to tell an adult that you can trust. And so
Yeah,
they'll go to the closest adult, and then you have that conversation with the teacher as well, and make sure that everybody, because also, I mean, there might be some components from the other child's perspective too that you might not be aware. So it's important to hear the full picture
yeah,
before you escalate it or anything like that.
yeah,
But to start taking it as a moment of empowerment for your child, because I think that'll be useful throughout their life.
Absolutely. Another life skill is like conflict management, conflict resolution, and even children with disabilities or not, like they
Yeah,
all need to know how to do that and identify their emotions, identify why they're feeling that way, identify why someone might be being mean, all
yeah,
those things. Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. So you also mentioned paraprofessionals. So I think a big part of, well, I don't actually know. I am not a parent of a child with a disability, but I've worked with a lot of children with disabilities and their families. And a big part of my work was knowing their child's rights once they entered the school system.
Mm.
I mean, talk about navigating a just maze, from diagnosis to IEP to all the things. I think though that when parents are informed, they're so powerful. They become their child's, strongest advocate. And I think it also makes inclusive classrooms more successful when parents understand their child's rights. Um, so what would you tell parents who have received a diagnosis for their child, about navigating not just the school system, but navigating their child's rights within the education system?
I think take it one step at a time is something big that we say at Uni Studies with any parent, because, like you said, it's just such a maze and there's so much into it, and into every aspect of parenting. But we're talking about education. I think it's important that if they have somebody that has already lived it, they're able to get the information little by little. And I fully agree with you that when the parent is educated, it creates a completely different experience for the child, for the teacher, for the family, because you're able to advocate better for that child. And the teacher understands it's not from a position of like, I know you can't do this, but it's more like, how do we work together? Because this is in
Mhm.
place so that they're able to access their education. But I also understand that you might need help with something. The teachers, not all of them are trained in special education. If it's an inclusive classroom, for example. So, having giving that teacher also that peace of mind that you're here
Mhm.
to walk this path with them and
Mhm.
not they're not alone, makes the whole conversation a lot more approachable. Because otherwise they feel like you're dumping the kid to them, and that's not
Yeah.
really, the best case scenario for anyone. So I think that's super helpful that you understand. But there's so many laws and so many that you don't need to like go and study all of that. You really go step by step, depending on what you need. Laws are popping up all the time. This year, for example, they're not supposed to go with mobile devices, which I fully agree. I think it's great that students are not able to have cell phones and mobile devices in the classroom. But for students with disabilities,
Mhm.
some of them might need like an iWatch for proprioception or for
Mhm.
reminders or things like that. So understanding that you are able to ask for these things is important, because that'll benefit your child specifically and their success in the
Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah. I think that's a huge part of equity, right?
Yeah,
It's making sure everyone has what they need in the
yeah.
classroom to be successful.
Yeah, and you know your child better than anyone. So really they're able to give you ideas. But
Mhm.
if you come in with a plan to the IP and say, this is I would love this, but I also need this. And I need this because of this, this, and this. It's not just because you think it would be a good idea. They
Mhm.
could be receptive. And I've heard it from many ESC teachers and many people in the ESC department, in the special education department, say that they can see the difference when a
Yeah.
parent understands or is prepared or is there and involved, and they themselves feel more empowered and more willing to do it. And I can understand that dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super helpful, when a parent knows all their rights.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through a little bit about more about Uni's buddies? How do parents get involved, and when they get involved, what happens?
So when a parent receives a diagnosis, they can reach out to us. It could be any diagnosis that falls under the intellectual or developmental disability category. Autism, Down syndrome, trisomy 18, any diagnosis that's unexpected usually. And they can connect with us through our website, and we'll be able to pair them with another parent or caregiver who is further along in this journey. And
Mhm.
so we connect them to be friends pretty much. The idea is
Yeah.
that they, continue through life together, and that the mentor is able to guide them or provide a listening ear. We've heard from other mentees, that when they receive the diagnosis, they have friends, but their friends don't really understand what they're feeling or going through, like that
Yeah.
parent who has been there and who you don't really need to say much sometimes because you already have
Yeah.
that much in common. So it's a pretty, amazing bond from the get-go. And then you'll be able to navigate the school system, and then have friendships, the social aspect, transitions, and later on. And then the beauty of Best Buddies is that we offer programs through the different life stages with jobs and inclusive living and transitions and so on. So the idea is that we're here from the beginning, through the
To the end.
entire journey.
Yeah.
So it's exciting for us. Our mentors are trained. Everybody is just so, because us parents, we know how difficult that moment can be, receiving that diagnosis, and how life changing it can be. Our
Absolutely. Yeah.
mentors are, just so like willing to give it their all. They're amazing. Nisi, Anais, who's on this call, is actually the one who talks to every family that joins Unie's buddies, and she
Mm.
creates these beautiful mentorships and pairs. And so it's been growing because I think there's just such a need for that sense of connection and community, and
Oh, yeah.
it's so impactful too.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna tear up, but I really think it's so powerful when someone tells you, like, "It's gonna be okay." Like, "I went through this. This is the beginning, like, you're in the trenches, but it's gonna go to different places." It's just so, like, powerful when you have someone reach out to you that's going through what you're going through.
100.
And you mentioned that moment of diagnosis. You know, what are parents going through when they receive that diagnosis?
I think the commonality here is a hurricane of emotions and thoughts,
Yeah.
depending on how familiar you are with your child's diagnosis. Um, but just in general, it's a lot to process because
Yeah.
and everybody processes it so different. Like the mom and the dad of the same child will process it
Oh my
differently.
gosh. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And so I think it's so important to just be able to connect with somebody that kind of slows you down a little bit and takes you one step at a time, and reminds you, like you said, it's going to be okay. Like, what is it that worries you at this point the most? Let's talk
Yeah.
about that. And, we'll unpack that. And then little by little, we'll move on to the next topic. Um, but it's a tendency to preoccupy your mind with tons of thoughts,
Yeah.
of which many may never happen.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a human thing in general, but in this particular scenario, it's very common. And so the idea is for you to just take it all in and be able to slowly start enjoying your child. And in the end, it's, still your child, and you can still do many of the things that you dreamt of. And, just if it's a baby, they need still to be fed and take a bath, and they need the cuddles, and they need
Cuddled.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just start focusing on that and seeing the child instead of the diagnosis
The
itself.
diagnosis. Yeah. I sometimes am, like, so conflicted with the diagnosis and the it being so known about the diagnosis to get the child the most help, but then the child isn't the diagnosis. So it's just like this
Yeah.
fine line of recognizing the child and the human, and then also understanding their diagnosis along with it. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's such an interesting point though about both parents sort of like letting their own reactions to the diagnosis. It's just like I didn't even think about that, but
Oh yeah, at Unis Buddies, we try to see how we can support fathers who often tend to focus like on the financial aspect of it, for example. But it depends on the parent, and then each diagnosis it's so different too. Even within autism, let's say there's a
oh
spectrum
yeah.
in autism
Yeah.
too. So we really one of the things that makes this program so special it's that it's very personalized, and if that parent needs resources we won't just send you like 5 links. We'll listen exactly to what you're needing and say based
Mhm.
on what you just told me I think you should check out this organization or this website. It's very much tailored to each family's journey and needs. And that's another thing. We partner with different organizations too, because together we want to uplift the community. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. I think there are many
Yeah.
organizations out there that we work with and make sure that the families feel supported in different aspects.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love that. We have YWCA has Head Start programs. We have after school programs. We work with families and babies, year round, summer camps. And so that is part of why I also wanted to do this in case there are any mommies out there or dads out there who are needing support. I know a lot of our underserved communities are overrepresented, underdiagnosed, all of the struggles of just being from a different part of town, right?
Yeah.
Even like, yeah, sometimes there's geographical barriers and sometimes there's language barriers. Can you talk to me a little bit about how Unis Buddies reaches those families that, might have trouble accessing supports?
Yes. So we Uni Studies is fairly new. It launched last year, but it's
Mhm.
growing quickly. It's now in Miami, Denver, Boston, and Nashville, and we're launching next week in Rochester, New York.
Wow.
Um, And so, all these different states also have different populations, and we are starting to now develop a program under with Spanish. So we have Spanish speaking mentors, and we have a person that speaks Spanish that trains these mentors. We have materials in Spanish as well. And little by little, we hope to grow too. We're translating a lot of our assets into different now with AI and different programs to different languages as well. Again, we partner with different organizations to make sure that there's accessibility for
Mhm.
whatever we might not be able to provide at the moment. There's somebody else that has them covered. We don't just kind of leave them there floating, but we always find a way to make sure that they have what they need at this moment. And then next step, we'll get there with them as well.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. I feel like accessibility, not just like ADA accessibility, but like actual like being able to access the resource is just like half the battle.
Yeah,
So that's
for sure.
great to hear.
Yeah. And even I dropped our one pager on the chat.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
but even, when it comes to them taking that first step to reach out to us, that's something we really thought about because
Yeah.
for some people, it's so hard to ask for help or
Mhm.
to connect with somebody that you've never met. It's like, then it opens up another set of questions like what that might be like, or I don't know, be
Yeah.
scared about it. So we allow families to come to us in the most natural way possible. They can come to us in our local socials and just meet the families that are there. If they're comfortable, then they sign up, or they can text us. They can, scan the QR code, and whenever they're ready, they can sign up or get a reminder to sign up. So whatever makes their journey easier and
Yeah.
lighter, that's what we're here for.
That's awesome. That's super thoughtful. I love that. So I have one more question and I'm gonna then open it to the chat, but I want to know I guess I want to know what you wish someone would have told you when Valentina was born. or when you received her diagnosis? Or if you could look back and tell yourself something, what would you have told yourself?
I guess to myself that my life is about to change in the most beautiful way.
Mhm.
Um, I remember thinking at that time that when she was born, everything was so like so much information, so much processing. But I had to kind of like become this new person to be the mom I wanted to be for her and then later for my son. And so I felt like I pressed this turbo button on personal growth. But I think a lot of it has to do with having that child with a disability. It just makes you see life in such a different perspective.
Mhm.
Your values, everything starts shifting so much. And I am so grateful because it's allowed me to live life in such a richer way. So I think I would tell myself that, your life, you're going to be so rich in the most unexpected ways that you can imagine. And I remember my husband too, he said, we won the lottery because not many people, it's like 1 in 700 that get this experience. And I was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
so yeah, that's what I often tell people that I've mentored um, in the past.
That's so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Like, good one.
And I get emotional even to this day
I
talking
know,
about
like,
it because it's such a like, powerful moment.
I mean, it's just so yeah, it's so incredible. It's nuts. Oh, man. Okay. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to squash my tears a little bit. I'm going to open it to the chat. I know we don't have very many people here, but we do have some people. So if you're feeling brave and you want to come off mute or show yourself on your screen, you may. If you want to have ask a question in the chat, feel free. Yeah. Anybody feeling brave out there? Anybody have any questions about Eunie's buddies? I think Denise is typing. Denise, did I just call you out? She's like, no.
Love
Okay.
to hear how if anybody's brave to share how they received a diagnosis because that's something that we're working on at Uni's Buddies as well with our medical providers. Some of
Mm,
them have expressed that they don't necessarily feel prepared to um, share the diagnosis or how to word it properly. So that's something that we're working on in the program as well as we continue, as we start working more and more with medical providers so that they can refer their families to us. But I know that for me and for a lot of our families, the moment you hear that diagnosis changes a lot for us. And our
mm,
story really starts with what they tell us. So if anybody will like to share how they receive a diagnosis or, anything that anybody told them that make them see things differently, I would love to hear ideas or
I don't know if we have.
perspectives.
I did see Eunie's buddy's video on Instagram, um, with the mother who was talking about how she would have wanted it to be different, that diagnosis, the delivery of it to come out differently. And I think you're right. I think there are so many of those like really vulnerable, scary moments for parents or just for people in general, that medical professionals, they might know everything's going to be okay and they might know the trajectory, but we don't. And so when they deliver that news and they say it in a way that's just like, you're just like, wait, what? Wait,
Ah,
what is this?
yeah,
So,
sure. It's
yeah.
it's it's like dropping a bomb unless you know how to do it properly, because everything is about to change from there. So, um, yeah, it's important. We're doing our research on how families have, received this diagnosis and how
Mhm.
doctors are delivering it. And for me, it was interesting because I remember I couldn't ask any questions. I was in such a shock. But the one
Yeah.
question that I could ask was, what about all the testing? Because I learned when she was born. And so he just told me sometimes life has bigger plans for us. And that's actually in the video. Which that answer at that time, like it didn't
Yeah.
register. Um,
Yeah.
but in hindsight now, of course it does. But yeah, it's a wonderful journey. It's important for us to balance it though, because it could be a lot sometimes. Um, but we mindfully have to balance understanding the school system or the health system or whatever it may
Mhm.
be with just enjoying our child. And our children are incredible in so many ways, and
Yeah.
we have to focus on those strengths and beauties and continue with those.
Nisi just asked a wonderful question. I'm working on diversifying my children's bookshelves at home as well. What are some of your favorites for me to include for a toddler just starting school?
Ooh,
This
I
is for
love
both,
it.
yeah, this is for both Sarah and Cecilia or anyone else on the call.
Yeah, I would love suggestions from other people too, but I think, Nisi, one of the big ones that we have is the one that we put in our welcome box from Joanna Gaines. I actually forget the name, and I am looking at our library here. Um, it's a great book because it talks about how important it is to be unique, and so it values diversity. There's another one called "It Matters." No, "You Matter."
You matter. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, I love it too. Oh, there's so many, really. I think I can, and Nisi has done an amazing job too at putting together this one sheeter with resources for families to share. So if we can definitely share that at some point with any of you guys. But
oh
books
my
are
gosh.
just, I think I have a full library here as well, that keeps evolving as my children get older. But I think they're just such a great resource to talk about any topic with our children.
Yeah.
Yes, the
I
world
have a
needs who you were
favorite.
made to be. That's what it's called.
Ah. Oh, the world needs who you were made to be. Wow. That's a really great title.
It is.
Um,
We really recommend that one.
I love the book My Brother Otto. It might be for a little bit older.
Uh-huh.
It's called My Brother Otto, and it's about a crow, a brother and sister crow, and the little brother is on the spectrum. He uses a tablet to communicate. I think it's honestly the first time I've seen a book with a character that uses a tablet for communication. He only wears the color yellow. He's he's like really, really sweet. It's just such a sweet book, and especially for
Put that
siblings,
one.
like I think it's a really, really cool, like sweet way to look at being on the spectrum.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then for toddlers, I can't remember. There's a whole, it's like a series. It's like, I can't remember the names of them, but it's like change starts with us, love starts with family.
Oh, yes. I know which one you're talking
Do you
about.
know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? But
Uh-huh.
their little characters, oh, their little characters are so diverse. It's like little kids in wheelchairs, little kids, like even kids with like ID canes who are visually impaired. There's just so they've just like it's everybody. So yeah, I think that is like the most fun and like great way to start inclusion, like ideas of inclusion and just understanding that everyone is different and everyone is great the way they are,
Yeah.
um, is with
And
little
I would
books.
encourage families to attend our walks, for example, just expose their children to inclusion. I tell
Mhm.
you, I can tell if your child has been exposed or not. Um, like us parents can tell, and we have a very different experience. And from there, we'll see if we need to somehow, navigate the conversation and open the doors for education about it, or if it's just something seamless, and then we can grow a friendship from there, and identify what they have in common and go from there.
Yeah.
But I think I would think, personally, that it's a responsibility for every parent, if you want your child to have the best possible um, I don't know, education in general
Yeah.
and emotions and feelings and so on,
I
to be
know.
able to foster diversity in their environment because it's really what they're going to live in. And it's important
Yeah,
that they're
it
familiar
is.
with it.
I love it. I love this conversation. I love thinking about little children and inclusion. It just makes me feel so happy. We have Denise did put something in the chat that I think is interesting. And we do have a few more minutes. So she says, I do not have any children or grandchildren diagnosed with IDD, but my children and grandchildren were diagnosed with SLD. Denise, could you tell us what SLD is, just for people who don't know what that means? You I think you're muted, Denise. Or are you? Your mute button's not on. Now it is.
Oh, that's strange. You're referring to a specific
Y
learning disability or disorder?
Is
Okay. Do
it
you want to? Yeah, I don't know if we can hear you. I was going to say you do want to share
you
a
can
little.
type it in the chat. I guess so while Denise is doing that, grandparents, you know, grandparents of children with disabilities and their responses to diagnosis and their journey with a grandchild who might be on the spectrum or might have Down syndrome. Do you ever work with grandparents?
Well, we're building as we continue to build the program. We built the Facebook support group, and that one is specifically for families. Normally, people who sign up will be parents. But it would be cool to have grandparents too, because their experience, first, they learn a lot about what this journey might be like, by seeing
Yeah.
the conversations or posts or anything like that. But it definitely, it's so interesting. And Uni's buddies will evolve into, or the family support pillar will evolve into also supporting grandparents because it's news for them too. And if they're not familiar with this, how do you navigate this? And what do you tell your daughter or your son? What is the proper language? There's just so much around it that can be confusing or stressful. And you want to make sure that your child and your grandchild are okay, but you yourself are starting to learn about this. So I think in general, having somebody or like being part of the community helps a lot because you begin to understand and familiarize yourself with it. Uh,
Yeah.
but then as you immerse yourself more in it, I think it's great if you're able to talk to another grandparent, like somebody else who's been in
Mhm.
that role as well.
I love that. I actually was thinking of Nisi because her daughter Aria is like, I mean, she's got Abu and she's got Abuela, and I know so many children who, their Abuela is the one who does their childcare for the first year of their life. So yeah, I think that would be such a huge thing for grandparents, they're just
Yeah, want to step in for sure and see how,
yeah.
you know, it's a learning process for the whole family.
Yeah.
Um, we we had to start at the beginning when we launched this program, but we fully recognize that the entire family is part of this experience, and so the next step for us is siblings. How they
Oh,
process, how
cool.
they
Yeah.
sometimes might not get all the attention that the sibling with IGD does. So
Yeah.
we're here to support them, and so the family support pillar will continue to grow to ensure that the whole family feels empowered and supported.
Yay. I'm so happy to hear that. I love it. I love Uni's buddies. I love best buddies. And I'm just so grateful for your time, Cecilia, and your expertise, your knowledge, your compassion and your experiences. So thank you so much for coming and sharing all of that. How can people find Uni's buddies?
So people can go to our website, which is bestbuddies.org/family support.
Mhm.
I've dropped the one pager in the chat, which has our information, our QR code, our cell phones if they want to text. So we're here to walk alongside you. So I also want to thank you, Sarah, for this space and this awesome
Yeah.
conversation. You're a great interviewer, and
Oh!
it's wonderful to
I'm no
chat.
Diane Walters, but I love talking to people, so it comes naturally. But thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. If no one has any more questions, I will wish you a wonderful afternoon. It's Monday. We got this. We can do it. But yeah, everyone take care, and we'll see you the next time.